Hello everyone, gshock here, back again with another G-Shock disassembly video. Today we're gonna have a look inside the metal GM-2100 Casioak and compare it to the regular GA-2100 Casioak. The movement is the same, 5, 6, 11. So I wonder if we could just swap between these two, or did Casio make them to be different? Mine over here already ran out of battery, so I'm gonna show you guys how to swap these two battery as well while at it, because they're just the same thing. But is it really though? It uses a 16mm lug band, and the width side over here I believe goes to 24mm. So if you want to swap to a different watch band, make sure the lug is 16mm, which is pretty much every G-Shock in the market. 5600, 5000, DW1600, all those are interchangeable in this watch. On a regular Casio G-Shock, they normally will use a 1.5mm hex screwdriver, but in this watch it didn't. It uses a different kind of screwdriver. You could try to use a hex screwdriver, but you won't be able to open it up. I'm going to use this star screwdriver and open up all 4 screws. So let's do that. Screws out of the way, and here is the body of the watch itself. To remove it, just press it down. Pretty easy to be removed. And one thing I need to point out here is that there's a G-Shock sign at the 9 o'clock position, and say if you don't like this positioning, you could just rotate the bezel like that 180 and plug it back in, and it will still fit just fine. Remove this out of the way, and here is the casing for the watch, which is just resin, unlike the original version that is carbon core case. Screws out of the way. Let's open up the back and see how it looks on the inside. So AJ31 code, and you can see the backplate was entirely coated to gold. There's the speaker spring for the beeping sound each time you press the pushers or the buttons. That is the battery, pretty much located at the top position of the watch. Japan movement, like any of those out there. And if you compare them side to side, you can see that, well, they're exactly the same. So looking for replacement parts in the future might be easier, I think, for this model. Alright, let's analyze this movement for a little bit. Each time you press this button, any button at all, the pusher, you actually press the shaft, and the shaft will push down a metal plate. If I press this button, you can see the same thing as well. If I press this lower right button, you can see the same movement, and this button, the same thing as well. So if there's any issues at all with your watch, check this positioning, whether that point of contact actually make contact or not each time you press the button, because over time dirt might get stuck underneath these buttons over here, and when you press it, it didn't make contact because it got stuck, and that might cause some issues. Okay, with that said, let's take this movement out now. Alright, just use your fingers, totally fine. And if you want to operate your watch, you could still do that just using your finger. Just press this, and there you go. I just started the stopwatch. Stop. And before I go even further, I want to show you guys one other thing. If you look on the inside of the case, there's that slot over here. It was placed slightly off from the center, so there's another slot at the top of this movement, and that is over there. So each time you put this movement back in place, make sure this thing align, and that's how you make sure this thing's straight. And there's one at the top and also one at the bottom as well. You could say the same thing on the GA-2100 version. If you look at this faceplate, you'll see there's one dot, a holes, one over here and one over here, and there's also a pin to match that on this index marker as well. One over there, one over there, and one down here. So this is what holds this indices in place so that it won't just move around as you go up throughout your day. For this metal version, since it didn't have any one of those slots, if you compare this side to side, no holes over here, nothing at the top, nothing over here as well. So in order to make sure that the indices didn't just move around, they have to put it at the top side, basically underneath the glass. The casing for the watch itself, obviously it is different. One is carbon, one is resin, but the shape is also different. Also, the button placement didn't look to be the same. Here is the resin bezel of the regular GA-2100. Let me try to show you guys one thing. There we go. I could kind of plug it in there. I mean, it looked like a fit, and that is because this resin is flexible. But if you view it from the side, you could see that it bent, and if you view it from the bottom, it didn't fit perfectly to the shape of the hard case. So there's a gap over there and one over there. Of course, one at the bottom, one at the bottom. And of course, the screws didn't align. So you cannot just use a resin for original version. Can you put it on here? I cannot force it in there. It's just the shape is totally different. Here are all the parts. On this side, the GM-2100, on this side, GA-2100. I'll show you the close-up photo comparison between each corresponding part as I'm explaining. But as far as everything goes, the only part that you could just swap right away without any concern whatsoever is this O-ring over here. They have the same sizing, and that's it. Meaning Casioak didn't just recycle all the parts and just swap the bezel into metal. They redesigned the entire piece. This one over here, yes, you could swap them, but the glass, you cannot swap them. The size is exactly the same. I measure it just using my ruler. Actually, I don't have any proper tools, and I add a close-up photo of that as well. Yes, the same diameter, however the thickness is not the same, which is ridiculous. The GA version is slightly slimmer than the GM version. I cannot measure it, I don't have a proper tools, but you guys could see the close-up photo yourself and see the difference, like it is obvious. And then here is the metal backplate, just in case you want to swap this. It is not the same size at all, meaning you cannot lock it in place afterwards. The GM is wider, so there's that, this thing out of the way. The bezel, obviously totally different thing. And then the movement. All right, this is pretty interesting actually. I could take the movement of a GA-2100, plug it in from the back, and it will work just fine. Lock everything in place, done. And there we go. We could use a regular GA-2100 movement and put it in this, I would say, metal Casioak, and it will fit just fine. But just the movement without these indices. And then if you take a GM-2100 movement, and if you want to plug it inside this GA-2100 case, you cannot do that. And that's because the way the index marker was placed. This one supposed to be placed on the movement, whereas on the GM underneath the glass. So the placement is different, meaning you have space to plug this thing in here. Whereas on this side, if you want to change them, there's no gap, no spacing for this to be plugged in here. Notice how the indices is not the same. So if I were to use this movement, I'm gonna need to take the indices from the, of course, the carbon core options and put it at the top. And that didn't make any sense because there's no space to put these indices at all at the top. Plus, if you compare between just these two indices over here, even the design itself, you could obviously see the difference right away. It is, I mean, of course the finishing is different, but the sizing, the shape, the design is totally different thing. Front and also from the back, also from the side. You could see this one is slightly lowered for the GM version, which is pretty cool in my opinion. This ring, however, I would call this mini ring. It's the same size, exact same shape, but the design is different. On the back is different, meaning it was locked differently in this hard case. So even if you could swap them on the outside like so, it look good, but you cannot put the entire set inside the hard case. They're just not gonna fit because they're not gonna lock in place. If you look on the casing as well, I think this will pretty much shows everything. How there's an indentation, a pin over there on the GM, so you could lock the index marker. On the GA, you're gonna need to use this metal frame support to lock the index in place, so that's just different over there. If for whatever reason you still want to swap the movement out, let's say, all you could do is swap these two over here. But then technically I think if you want to swap this, I don't know why you have to do that. You're gonna need to change this faceplate on this GM-2100. Take it out and use a faceplate from this one over here. I don't know why you want to do this, just weird, but still change the faceplate, and then yeah, it became the same thing. The only difference here I think is the faceplate design. It was designed differently. If I swap this one into here and this one into here, then I could technically change the casing, but then again, why would I just change it like that? I mean, it's still the same thing. The movement is exactly the same. It's not like this one is better, this one is not. There's just the same thing, performing exact same function. I'm gonna need to clean this entire things up for my fingerprint and for all the dust that since I've been swapping them around, dust everywhere. I'm gonna clean those up and install everything back in place, so I could make a I'm gonna try to make a modification video for the GM-2100 later, so stay tuned for that. But for now, if you have any other questions, if you want to check something else that I haven't covered in this video, just comment down below. I'll test them out and answer your questions to my best ability. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. And of course, I'm going to change the battery for this, which is so easy. I'll show you guys how to do that.